Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering creativity. I'm Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Andrew Joslyn, who serves as the Associate Director of Popular Programming at the Seattle Symphony. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Aaron, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Well, I'm so excited to have this conversation. Obviously, the Seattle Symphony is one of our wonderful creative partners here at the show. And I thought I would just kick it off relating to your title, which obviously is leading popular programming. So for those in our audience who might not know kind of what does that encompass, et cetera, can you kind of share what falls within the scope of your role and what you oversee?
Right. Well, as you said, I am the Associate Director of Popular Programming. So, a large part of my role is building and managing programming that connects audiences to the symphony in meaningful and contemporary ways. So that's anything from film scores, that's contemporary, like artist collaborations, like with Rick Ross, or having the Head and the Heart or Andrew Bird doing a show with the symphony. It's also kind of fringe classical stuff, like we have a Jane Austen program coming up soon. So it's a wide range of stuff. So, what I do in my role, day to day, that can mean anything from negotiating with the artists and the agents directly. It's overseeing budgets. It's coordinating with our production, our ops teams, and technical side. It's developing long-term production or programming strategy, curating, our pop series, our film stuff, our pop specials. And it's also working with our marketing, our artistic and technical departments to bring all these large scale projects to life. So, um, you
Awesome.
know, it's fun. I mean, this is absolutely a dream job for me. So.
Right. And it absolutely seems like it. And I was curious kind of as you mentioned that kind of part of you have obviously all of these just logistical things and making sure things can happen and contracting and
Right.
artist curation and all of these things, obviously the direct programming, but also kind of that strategy and long-term strategy. And wondered if you could kind of share with us, right? I think there are a lot of institutions and whether presenters or orchestras who think about popular programming and or think about relevance to their community or to the broader community, to the art form, et cetera. Just wondering if you could kind of share what does that kind of either strategy or goals look like as you're thinking about popular programming and the role of the Seattle Symphony in its community?
Yeah. It's interesting because uh I actually came from the artist side of the music world. So I toured, and for almost like 15 years I was a music director with a hip hop artist. I've done collabs, co-writes, done a bunch of stuff with music production, working um always with classical musicians, but in this kind of intersection where, you have trained classical artists that are working in a pop context. So it's almost been my own kind of life work to figure out how these two worlds can mesh and work nicely with one another. It's interesting. I
And
believe the core mission.
do they work well together all the time?
You sometimes need a translator like myself to make it work. But yes, when both worlds can align, I think it's, the sum is greater than the separate parts. So it's interesting because I do believe the core mission is creating meaningful connection through music and the arts while ensuring, an organization like Seattle Symphony remains culturally relevant, financially sustainable, but also accessible to the broader community. Right now, I think symphonies and a lot of art organizations are at an important moment of evolution. I mean, we look at someone like, oh, what's his face? People that are bemoaning and looking down upon opera and classical music and everything else, there's, being like, it's a dying art. And I don't think that's the case. I think there's a growing recognition that we can preserve artistic excellence and tradition, like classical music and these amazing, amazing classical composers, but without becoming overly precious or restrictive about how the art form is presented. I still have some friends that are worried about going to a symphony hall because they feel it's too stuffy, it's too formal, or that they somehow need to be able to understand classical music in order to belong here. And I think we as symphonies and arts organizations really, really need to be actively working against that perception. So for me, being in a position of popular programming, I think I'm again, this is like a dream job for me because I feel like popular programming can act as that bridge. We can bring in audiences who, they may initially be coming for a film concert or they're coming for Rick Ross or something else, but then beginning to build a deeper relationship with the orchestra and the concert hall itself. So, yes, maybe you're just coming for a hip hop artist, but then all of a sudden you hear Rick Ross in a way that's presented fully fleshed out in a beautiful setting, acoustically pristine with the top orchestra and like the top musicians in your local community. It it changes people's perception of what music is and what that experience can be, you know? And it's
Love that. Love
you know
that.
what I mean? But the thing is, it's like when people come to a show like that, they're not worried about, oh, do I wait until intermission to applause, or is it okay if I cough? People are actively engaged with the music. Like I think that's something that people forget with older classical performances. A cadenza wasn't pre-written. It was improvised. People were going out there and engaging the audience, but the audience were all amateur musicians, so they felt like it was speaking for them because it was for them. So I think if we can get more back to that where everyone feels welcome and they can just have fun, that's where I feel like that's where the orchestra is really reflecting what the community and meeting them where it's at.
I absolutely love that, and of course, I think it has that ability, and love also how you talked about it can serve as this bridge. And wondering, do you find that there's also almost the opposite, where there are people who may have been going to, just traditional classics, masterpieces, etc. But then there's something in popular programming that interests them, and they find that it broadens even their own appreciation of the orchestra, not just kind of the introductory bridge, but also kind of a broadening for maybe some of the more traditional historical audiences.
Right. And I love to, lovingly say that I'm the gateway drug for getting anyone to kind of appreciate what more we can be offering, what more we could be doing. Like I said, I think if the art form is too restrictive either way, if we're looking too much down on popular and contemporary music, or if we're being too precious about classical music, I think at that point you're turning away audiences. And I think at this point in time, classical music and the symphony halls are for everyone. So I would
Absolutely.
absolutely, and I have had friends that are more classical heads that all of a sudden they're like, wow, I didn't know that Ravel had such a impact on Andrew Bird. Like it was all of a sudden a big opening experience for them where they're like, wow, I have a new appreciation for this contemporary artist. I had no idea that they were so influenced by this, and same thing with film scores. You you can see and hear obviously how much John Williams took from like Vaughan Williams and from uh the planets. I mean everything. So it's interesting because if you allow the audience to experience it without prejudice, they, I feel like the experience speaks for itself. People will then all of a sudden feel it and be like, wow, there really is something deeper here that I might have not have noticed prior.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's also just, I think part of the extraordinary power and impact of just our medium and our artistic discipline and the
Yeah.
format of a symphony orchestra and the power of sound that emanates from a stage and kind of just engulfs you.
Right.
That I when people haven't experienced that, they come and they experience, I feel like they're just taken to another place.
Yeah. Well, I think one of my favorite things, and like I said, I come from the artist world, and I was a contract orchestrator for Seattle Symphony before I was in this role. So I've also been in the role of producing and writing shows for artists. And one of my favorite things is when the artist hears their music for the first time with the symphony, they're usually crying. They all of a sudden realize they're like, wow, I've never heard my music this way, but it's always wanted to be this. It's always wanted to be this powerful and this meaningful and this emotional, and it's hard not to have some sort of almost epiphany where you're on stage sharing your song that you maybe wrote in your bedroom, and then all of a sudden you have 70 musicians behind you re-envisioning your art. It's if it can impact the singer and the songwriter that powerfully, it will absolutely have a lasting impact on the audience itself. And it's nothing short of magic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this is awesome and definitely encouraging any and all from our audience. Check out this programming in Seattle.
Please. Yes.
Unfortunately, we are just about out of time, but I always like to ask of all of my guests this work. You can just see this is right. This is in your passion center and the
Yeah.
joy it brings you. But even in that context, in a leadership administrative role, there definitely can be tough days, things don't work out, or artist contracts, or who knows, right? What starts to, kind of feel like it's falling apart. Just one, as an arts leader, any mechanisms or things that you do or utilize to kind of help you through the toughest of times?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because with Pop's concerts, there's a lot that can go wrong. You have big personalities, you have writers that might not match what the show's going to be. There could be something wrong with catering. There could be something wrong with the guest list. I'm all about risk mitigation as far ahead of time as possible, even if it almost seems ridiculous. So, I try and involve, and with risk mitigation, I try and be transparent as all get out. I will share everything that I know with all the teams. So I want to make sure my operations team knows, like, if there's a show I think is going to be a little weird, I try and let them know months in advance. Same thing with my tech team, artistic marketing. I try and flag stuff well ahead of time so that everyone is just in the know that, I want to make sure that I don't believe in creating panic, but I also don't believe in avoiding difficult conversations. So if there's like a real difficult show that I know is going to be coming, but it's selling well, I just want everyone to be in the know so we're working together. From a leadership role, I want to ensure that there's no silos. No one's trying to handle the whole thing by themselves and shouldering a Sisyphusian disaster. It's better that we're all working together and trying to problem solve as a group. We had a show recently where it could have been a disaster, but I worked very, very hard to make sure everyone was on the same page. We even got other symphonies involved, so we're all talking about how are we doing the tour routing? How do we make sure that this show is the charts were difficult. They weren't prepped right. The conductor was like, so there was just so many things. And especially with these shows, there's so many moving parts that you have to be on point so far in advance because even just a little problem where in the charts say, there's a flute part that there's a B flat. That little moment to figure out who's playing the wrong note in the orchestra, that takes minutes away from rehearsal. You don't have that time. So the more in advance I have to be doing risk mitigation, the better. So there you go.
Sounds amazing. Definitely bringing order to the complexity, especially of these types of shows. Andrew,
right?
Joslyn, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for everything you're doing in our field, and thanks so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Aaron.